when you roll your clay out on the slab roller, you're always going to get a canvas texture on your clay. So I don't like it on my forms usually. And this is one way to get rid of it. Just take the flat metal rib and go over the surface of it. So this is the thickness that I have now, which is probably between 1/4 and 1/2 of an inch. Okay, the other thing is if you make your slabs too thin and you press them into these shapes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these, press it in, and I have half, and then I'm going to take another one and make it the other half and join them together to make a sphere, right? So the rim, where I join the two pieces together, if it's really thin, it's not going to stay together very well. You need to leave this rim thicker than the wall that's underneath it, because that's the two places you're going to join together. And it's really hard, even if you cut an opening into the sphere, you're not going to be able to get your hand down in there to deal with that seam. So the best thing to do is to make sure the seam is wide enough to give you a good amount of surface area to join those two halves together. What I don't want to do is fold the clay as I'm getting it into here. If you fold it, you might trap an air pocket, or you will find that you will get a crease in the material. So this is what's happening. As I put it in here now, I'm going to stretch it out into the form, and it's going to get thinner. So I need it to be a little more substantial than what I want it to be like at the end. I don't want a big fold of crease. If I can help it. So the idea of using plaster as to shape clay with, there's two ways that you use a plaster mold, and one is called a slump and one is called a hump. So which one is that?
Slump.
If it's a hump, you would be draping the clay over it. If it's a slump, you're pushing the clay into it. This is a slump mold. And what I'm going to do is I just get the clay in there as best as I can. I'm going to take my fingers and push it up against the edges of the mold and compress it up against the sides. So I want to make sure that I have the clay pushed up against the side of the mold and I don't have an air pocket trapped in there anywhere. Because then I won't have a good half spherical form. I'll have it with a dimple out. So I pushed it into the form. Now I'm going to cut off the excess. And look how I'm cutting from the inside out, not from the outside in. Right? It's much easier because I'm resting the edge of the knife on the mold and rotating the mold, and I don't have to worry about the edge being uneven. Now, the one thing that you never, ever, ever want to do is take a metal or a sharp tool and go into the inside of this mold. Right? You can use the metal tool to cut this off here. But if I see you doing this, I'm going to get upset. Okay? All you have to do is scratch the inside of this mold. If you look at these, the insides of these are not very pristine anymore because they get damaged. And once a little bit of a scratch or a damage is in the surface, it's not going away. So you only use a wooden tool or a sponge to clean the inside of this. No metal tools! Okay? And you're laughing, but I will make a mold, and within a week, someone will drag a tool through it like this and scratch a big line. And that line is going to be there forever. So please take care of the molds and do not abuse them, because you may make your piece and get it finished and out of the mold, but the next person who goes to use it, they expect it to be nice and pristine when they use it also.
And you might want to use it again.
Yeah, I might. And if
Well,
some of these don't look very good, and that doesn't have to do with abuse, that has to do with the way they were made. But you can clean some of that up, right? But let's not, this is nice. Let's not scratch it up. And the more I compress this up against the edge of the plaster, the tighter and the more clean the shape will be. Because what I'm doing is compressing the clay up against the plaster, and then the plaster is soaking the moisture out of the clay. And when the plaster starts to soak up enough moisture out of the clay, it's going to release from this block, and I can turn it over and tap it, and it'll fall right out. Okay? So if you turn it over and you tap it and it doesn't fall out, it doesn't mean beat on it until it comes out. It means it's not ready yet. So you need to let it dry a little bit more, let it separate from the mold, and it will fall out eventually. But beating it is going to break the mold or damage something, maybe hurt your finger. So you can put it out in the sun, or you can use a hair dryer. But you really, about 2 or 3 minutes with a hair dryer, and this should come out. So what I'm doing is taking a coil and just pinching and adding some more material to this edge. But I want to be sure that this is flat. Join these two halves together, and I set it down, and it's soft. It's going to want to, bottom's going to push up, get flat, and it's going to want to open up. So I'm making a coil, and this is going to be like a nest. And now I'm going to do it forward. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to press the inside edge down. Whatever, you can use your elbow if it works. But I'm sloping it so that the outer edge is the high spot, just like the reverse of the ball. As it tapers in, so I want it to fit on here without making a flat spot on this edge. Like that. Right? That's a support for it. Getting warm over there?
Yeah. Do you want this to be trimmed off?
Nope. I always wondered how people actually made money from YouTube.
The only problem is they're going to say you kind of breaking
Yeah. I'm the teacher though, I can get away with this. You break it, I'm going to yell at you. So actually that real thick slip is nice for this because if there's any irregularities or if they don't meet up really good, the slip will sort of fill in any gaps.
Can you put a ring of clay around it and then rub it together? You know, like put one of those worms around it. Worms.
Yeah, but not a worm, a coil, right? Worms are what you go fishing with, so.
That's
This is a
Yeah.
coil, not a
a worm. Okay. The fish, if you put a coil around it, was that worm?
Yes, that's another way to do it.
All right, I just made one the other day.
Did you guys understand it? See, so she's saying instead of the way I'm blending it, if I wanted more reinforcement, I could do this. But then I sort of have a bump there. And this is also the way that I will make the surface of the clay really smooth, is to bend this rib and drag it over the surface of it.
Looks like my son's head.
Just don't fire it that way.
Yeah, and then I can't fire this unless it has some kind of an opening. Here. So yeah, by using this rib like this and going over the surface, I can make the surface almost get like a sheen to it. And it also refines the shape. But at this point, after I did this, I would stop. You still need to be conscious of that because as it shrinks, what could happen to the needle-sized hole? It could close. So later, what's a good idea is to poke the hole in and just wiggle it around and make it a little bit bigger. And that way you should be all right. And generally I'll do that like on the bottom under here.
Well, you haven't had a chance to polish it up.
So for now, that's all I need to allow the air to get in and out. It's sort of, as this thing shrinks, it's like, shh. I have made things one day and left them like this, and then poked a hole in them 2 or 3 days later, and they hiss. That's how much pressure starts to build up inside of it. I'll poke it and it'll go So, you only have so much time and so much shrinkage before it starts to build up a considerable amount of pressure inside.